Has Jacob Trouba played his final game as a New York Ranger? Plus, the Rangers are reportedly signing Sam Carrick. And of course, it is time for Free Agent Frenzy on this special live edition of Locked On New York Rangers.
You're Locked On the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1102 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's special live edition of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So indeed, we are live here on Locked On New York Rangers. It is T-minus 17 minutes until the start of free agency in the NHL. But that obviously hasn't stopped a lot of, I don't even know if I want to call them rumors. You know, I guess in theory, nothing can really become like officially official until the noon start time here. But there's reports all over, TV and the internet and everything, social media, Twitter, that this guy's going to sign with this team and it's going to be for this many years and that many, that much money and et cetera, et cetera. And unfortunately, I'm starting to get a little bit nervous here because, earlier in the day, the Rangers are being connected to guys like Toffoli, maybe somebody like Stamkos, Teräväinen. And, I've got mixed feelings on just about every free agent target that there is. There's always some risk and some reward involved with anybody that you sign, especially if it's for a lot of time and or a lot of money. But lately, the last, half hour or so has not been very kind to the Rangers or their prospects of, landing a big time free agent when the bell rings here today, because all of a sudden, Stamkos is being connected to Nashville. And I want to say the latest report that I saw had Toffoli possibly going to the Chicago Blackhawks, a couple others as well. But Rangers right now, nothing really cooking, at least, going by these most recent tweets from, some of the more respected NHL reporters that are out there on social media. But we'll get to the free agency in a little bit here. I want to kick off today's episode by talking about Jacob Trouba and the latest on him and what's become kind of a messy situation and just kind of an ongoing saga here the last few days with Jacob Trouba. So if Trouba does end up getting traded or waived, that will eventually be a whole other episode. I might even do that episode a little bit later today and then put it up. Today's mostly going to focus on the free agency stuff, but we've got some time here. It's a good time, good opportunity to talk a little bit about Jacob Trouba, at least for a little while here. A report from Larry Brooks that was out this morning really made it sound like Jacob Trouba, one way or another, has played his final game as a member of the New York Rangers. And of course, this could go a lot of different ways. This could conclude a lot of different ways. But we do know that Jacob Trouba, about a week ago, give or take a couple of days in either direction, was asked by the Rangers to submit his 15-team list of the teams that, he's going to put on his no-trade clause. Up until now, Jacob Trouba had a full no-move clause for his entire contract, or not the first year, which is kind of strange, but the 4 years after that, full no-move clause for Jacob Trouba. And now it goes down to 15 teams. Next year it would be 12 teams. But the Rangers asked for that list, and it looked like, just to kind of bring everybody up to speed here, anybody that might be, not up to date on everything happening with Jacob Trouba, it looked like the Rangers, a couple of days ago, had a deal in place with the Detroit Red Wings. The Rangers would send Jacob Trouba there. And the general feeling among, people, in the Ranger front office and whatnot is that might be a place that Jacob Trouba would prefer to go to as opposed to some other destinations, some other places that he could be traded to, because, obviously Trouba, well, first of all, he's got Andrew Kopp there. They're BFFs from way back in the day. And he also played a season of college hockey there with the University of Michigan. And, Jacob Trouba, the belief when he was with the Winnipeg Jets is that he wanted to play for a team in the United States. And if that is still the case, I would imagine that he's probably included all of the Canadian teams on his, no trade list, doesn't want to be traded back to Canada. And, I can understand that to a degree. But the trade that was reportedly in place between the Rangers and the Red Wings would involve Trouba going to Detroit and the Rangers retaining $2.5 million of Trouba's $8 million cap hit. Now, that's less than ideal because obviously you're paying somebody money to not play for you, so it's not a perfect situation for the Rangers, but I think most Ranger fans were on board with this just because, Trouba just did not play like an $8 million defenseman last year, and if you shed yourself of $5.5 million, that's a lot more cap space, a lot more free agent money that you have to play around with, this year as free agency starts here, and a lot more damage you can do as far as, attracting some of the big fish in the free agent pond to come to the New York Rangers. Unfortunately, there's obviously a holdup here. It's not known if Jacob Trouba is going to include Detroit on his list as an attempt to block the Rangers from trading him there. But, and let me get back to the Brooks report here. It sounds like what probably will happen if Jacob Trouba blocks the trade to Detroit or the trade with Detroit falls apart in one way or another, that what will probably happen is the Rangers will place Jacob Trouba on waivers as they did with Barclay Goodrow. And then at that point, any of the other 31 teams can trade Jacob Trouba because just like Goodrow, yes, Trouba does have a partial no trade clause, but he does not any longer have a no move clause, which means he can go on waivers and anybody at that point can claim him. And if you're Trouba, it might make more sense if you like Detroit over, a lot of the other potential destinations. It might make sense for you to just accept the trade to Detroit if that is your preference over the alternatives. Because again, that Brooks report really makes it sound like Trouba is done with the Rangers in one way or another, and that the decision has been made by Chris Drury and company to move on. And, I don't take any joy in it. Jacob Trouba is obviously one of those guys that, wears his heart on his sleeve and goes out there and battles every single night and gives you everything that he's got. But the cold, hard truth here is that this is a business, and Jacob Trouba, certainly not recently, and maybe not ever during his tenure as a Ranger, has played like an $8 million a year defenseman. That's just the facts. The other fact that Braden Schneider has basically eclipsed Jacob Trouba in every single facet of the game. It makes Trouba a little bit more expendable. You don't want to be paying $8 million a season to a third pair defenseman. I don't care who it is. And at this point, the Rangers have 4 defensemen. I mean, I know Lindgren is an RFA. You never know, he could get traded. Braden Schneider, the same thing, although I think Schneider will certainly be back. But bottom line, the Rangers have at least 4 defensemen who are, ahead of Jacob Trouba in the pecking order. So it just makes sense from that perspective. And there's one other point I want to make here regarding Trouba that I have not seen anybody else make, and that is looking at the Jacob Trouba contract. So again, to go through the whole Jacob Trouba contract, 7 years, $8 million a season. That's the contract extension that he signed after the Rangers did their deal with Winnipeg, however many years ago that was. So to break down everything going on in the Trouba contract, the first year, again, had no trade protection or no move clause of any kind. In theory, the Rangers, in the first year of Trouba's contract, could have traded him to any team in the NHL, although that's just a strange thing to me, because if you sign somebody to a 7-year deal, how bad would they have to play for you to think like, oh my God, we have to trade this guy? And if they played that badly in the first year of the contract, what team is possibly going to be looking to line up and take on a contract like that? So that was always a little bit strange to me. But bottom line, that first year where he did not have any no move clauses or no trade clauses or anything like that, that year came and went. And that meant that the next 4 years, Jacob Trouba would have a full no move clause. And of course, those 4 years have come and gone. And now he's got the partial no trade clause. But the point I want to make here, Jacob Trouba's contract that he signed with the Rangers was for 7 years and $8 million a season. If a no-move clause was, a full no-move clause was that important to Jacob Trouba and the Trouba family, and they really wanted to make sure that, okay, we're going to be here for the entire, duration of this contract, and there's no way that Jacob Trouba can be traded in any way or another. If it was that important to Jacob Trouba, what he could have done, potentially, is taken a little bit less money per season and gotten the full no-move clause put into his contract. He did not do that. Now, do I know for sure that the Rangers would have offered him that? No. But bottom line, if you're paying somebody $8 million a season, then you got to figure there was room for negotiations there. Like Jacob Trouba could have taken a little bit less money and had the full no move clause put into his contract, but he didn't do that. He wanted to get as much money as possible. And hey, more power to him. That's the case for most players in the NHL. You might have a guy every once in a while give this team or that team a little bit of a discount. Panarin took a little bit less money from the Rangers than he could have gotten with the Islanders, and he's been here ever since. But, there's people that feel for Trouba, and I get that too. He's a new dad, and he's got an infant child right now, and, he doesn't want to leave the Rangers, and he wants to be here, and he wants to continue being this team's captain, and I certainly respect that, and I respect the fact that he goes out there and battles every single night. But again, he took the Rangers for every dollar that he could, and that's what a lot of players are going to do. But I still get the feeling that a no-move clause for the entire contract probably could have been had for Jacob Trouba had he taken a little bit less money per season. These are not charity causes. When you have somebody that has a no-move clause, a full no-move clause, a partial no-trade clause, whatever it might be, there's all give and take, going on with these contract negotiations. And, a lot of times a team might give out a full no-move clause as a way to pay somebody a little bit less money. And with Jacob Trouba, again, if it was that important to him and that crucial to him, that he knows for sure he's going to be with the Rangers through the entire contract and nobody can touch him and he can't be waived and can't be traded or any of that stuff, then again, I got to believe that he could have left a little bit of money on the table, taken the full no-move clause, and he wouldn't be having to deal with the situation that he's having to deal with at this point. So that's kind of where we're at right now. I get the feeling with Trouba, if he does not, get traded today, that you probably will see him on waivers. And at that point, so I don't really know how it works. I'll be completely honest here. I get the feeling that if Jacob Trouba is on waivers, that they don't, necessarily get all $8 million of his cap space to use on free agents today. I don't see how they possibly could, because he'd still be on the books. There's a 24-hour process there that allows teams to claim him. And, we'll just take it from there if Jacob Trouba is indeed placed on waivers. But we're going to keep everything rolling in just a second. We are 7 minutes away from the start of free agency. And I want to talk about somebody that the Rangers have already signed, and that is Sam Carrick, or, that's the report, is that they are going to sign him. So we will do that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a quick minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much that I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games. And the sports aren't sportsing like we all want them to. But FanDuel lets us keep the sports going whenever we want. All we have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime that we're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So head to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, we just want to take a quick minute to let everybody know, or thank everybody, rather, the everydayers for supporting Locked On New York Rangers. And for the everydayers, you guys are definitely going to want to stick around this week, because we're not stopping here. We're not slowing down here on Locked On New York Rangers. It might be the offseason, but we're going to continue talking about everything the Rangers do and maybe some of the things that they don't do here in free agency. We've also got the entire draft class to review. We talked about Emery briefly, but we'll have some more on him and the rest of the players that the Rangers took as well. And yeah, just kind of keep things rolling and, again, talk about all the wheelings and dealings for the Rangers this offseason. But I do want to shift our attention to somebody that it sounds very much like the Rangers will be signing. I put out a very short video about him a little bit earlier today. You can check that out if you'd like. But that player is 32-year-old center and right winger Sam Carrick. He signs a 3-year deal with the New York Rangers worth $1 million per season. Kind of reminds me of the Jonathan Quick situation last year, where we have a free agent signing before, free agency really begins. It was heavily rumored that Quick would be joining the Rangers. Of course, he did and had a great season. But as for Carrick, what we know about him, 6 feet tall, 200 pounds. He started his career with the Toronto Maple Leafs. They took him in the 5th round of the 2010 draft at number 144 overall. Spent 2 years with Toronto, 5.5 years with the Ducks, and then half a season with the Edmonton Oilers. So 1 win away from becoming a Cup champion, Sam Carrick. But he was part of the trade deadline frenzy that went on this past year. He was dealt at that time from the Ducks to the Oilers. My first thought when I saw that the Rangers were signing Carrick, because, I'd heard of him and I'm pretty familiar with his game, know that he's a bottom sixer. But as soon as I saw that, my first feeling was that, okay, this is the guy that they're bringing to replace Barclay Goodrow. And I hate to even phrase it that way, because I don't want to make it sound like, every bottom six player is just this interchangeable, cannon fodder for this team or that team. But you can understand why the Rangers did this. Barclay Goodrow is making $3.64 million per season, as we've established on here. And as many of you have opined in the past, that's just too much for Barclay Goodrow. It's too much for really anybody that's playing in the bottom six, and certainly somebody that is predominantly playing in the fourth line. So they put Goodrow on waivers. He gets claimed by the Sharks. Sharks have a boatload of cap space, and they bring him in as a veteran leader. But now you get somebody that's basically going to step into the Barclay Goodrow role. And again, that is Sam Carrick, known as a reliable defensive forward. He's obviously not a superstar. I mean, we know that. The contract would let you know that in and of itself. But a physical player, killed penalties for the Ducks, but did not do that nearly as much with the Oilers, which makes sense. The Oilers are a better team, and they probably, by the time they acquired Carrick, had their guys in place, and he just never really got to make much of a dent there. As far as like his career stats, I do have his page open here, his hockey reference page. So 8 seasons in the NHL, 240 games, 28 goals, 25 assists, 53 points. He's a minus 41 in that time. I do get the feeling that has a lot to do with the fact that he's played for the Ducks, who have been down in the dumps the last, handful of seasons. For what it's worth, the 16 games with Edmonton that he played in the regular season, he was an even plus minus. So he immediately saw an uptick in that stat, basically as soon as he got there. But yeah, minus 41 for his career, averaging 11 minutes and 19 seconds of ice time. He has also won 50.7% of his faceoffs, so slightly above average. And coming off of what looks to be the best season of his career when it comes to the faceoff circle. Between the Ducks and the Oilers this past year, he was at 53.4%. So somebody that wins a few more than he loses, that's always a good thing. 94 block shots in his career, 478 hits, and that's with limited ice time, so he'll go out there and throw his weight around for sure. And 62 takeaways against only 53 giveaways. So to me, it's a quality fourth liner, Sam Carrick, and it's not a move that's going to make or break the Rangers, but you have to fill out your roster in one way or another. And I think getting a defensively responsible physical forward to, again, basically take the place of Barclay Goodrow, that's just what the doctor ordered for the New York Rangers. Now, when this happened, I tweeted out that I like the move. I just hope this isn't the biggest thing that the Rangers do today. And I really hope that that's the case, but I'm getting very nervous. There's a lot of names around the NHL, big UFAs. This guy's going to sign here. This guy's going to sign there. And we are now just 2 minutes away from the official start of free agency. So we'll see what happens. But as of now, it's not looking so good for the Rangers when it comes to landing one of the big fish in the sea, so to speak. The one other thing I'll say about Carrick before we move on and turn our attention to free agency officially beginning here is that, I saw some people expressing some concern about the length of the contract. It's 3 years. I don't have any problem with that at all. The fact that it's 3 years, to me, that's just a way to keep the average annual value and the cap hit as low as possible, only $1 million a season. And if I'm remembering correctly, I believe the league minimum for this upcoming year will be $750K. So it's barely a shade above that. And if it ever comes down to it, if Carrick, the third year of his contract, he just can't play, or you just don't have much of a use for him anymore, you can send him to the minors. You can place him on waivers. If somebody claims him, then they get him, obviously. But if you have to send him down to the minors, you can bury his entire contract there. So this is not the kind of contract or the kind of deal that's going to hurt the Rangers in any way. Going to 3 years actually makes sense, because if he does play well, then you can hang on to him for, the length of that contract. And if he doesn't, there's plenty of ways you can move on from him and not have it hurt the team in the slightest. So I actually really like the fact that it is 3 years. Again, a good signing overall, more depth, more physicality. Just a good defensive forward, and somebody that, again, is very likely to step into that Barclay Goodrow role there. So we are going to turn our attention to the start of free agency. If you see me looking in this direction every so often, it's because I've got the NHL Network on up on the wall there, and 20 seconds away from free agency. So when we come back, free agency will have officially started, and we'll see who signs where, and hopefully the Rangers can figure out a way to do something to improve this team. They have a very good team, but it could certainly stand to be improved as well. So we will do all that in just a second. All right, so free agency is upon us. It looks like it has now officially started. One of my favorites, Tyler Bertuzzi, he is going to the Chicago Blackhawks. He was like right near the top of my list. It looks like it's going to be 4 years, $5.5 million for Bertuzzi. I thought he would be a great fit for the Rangers. He has enough scoring that you could put him onto your top line with Mika and with Kreider. And Bertuzzi's somebody that plays with such physicality and definitely has an edge out there. and could do some of the dirty work for the New York Rangers. And specifically on that line, I think he would have been a really nice fit for this team. But unfortunately, 4 years, $5.5 million per season. It seems a little high, but that's the name of the game when it comes to free agency. If you want to go out and get your guy, then you're going to have to overpay. You've got other teams that want his services too, and you got to outbid them and sweeten the pot in some way to bring in this player or bring in that player. And Bertuzzi, man, he was up there for me, and unfortunately, going to the Blackhawks. It's also being reported now that Steven Stamkos, he's another guy that, I have somewhat mixed feelings about Stamkos, but the Rangers have been interested in him for about 10 years at this point. And, there were rumors they might be interested in him this year as well. Looks like he's going to be going to the Predators for 4 years at $8 million per season. Now, that is a lot for a 34-year-old. But once again, that is the name of the game. You want your guy, you're going to have to overpay at least a little bit. And it looks like the Predators were willing to do that. And the Rangers not so much. Or I shouldn't even say that. Maybe Stamkos for one reason or another preferred going to Nashville. He's doing the Ryan McDonagh thing, going from Tampa Bay to Nashville. As far as players that are still out there, I mean, I don't know. They're going pretty quickly here. Toffoli is somebody that the Rangers were connected to quite a bit. I don't know that I'm seeing anything on Toffoli definitive. You guys are going to have to bear with me as I scour the internet here. And for everybody in the comments section, I'll get to some of your comments as well. Oh no. So Toffoli's going to San Jose. That's not ideal. 4 years at $6 million. Again, that's a little bit much for Toffoli. And comparing him to Bertuzzi, who got slightly less, 4 years and $5.5 million, I think I would have preferred Bertuzzi there, but I could have lived with Toffoli. Toffoli's bounced around the league quite a bit, but he's an effective player, somebody that, again, I think would have been a really nice money on that top line right wing. And man, the names are flying fast and furious here. Okay, I'm seeing, I'll just read random ones too, even guys that I'm not necessarily sure the Rangers would have been interested in. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, 4 years, $3.5 million with Toronto. I mean, that's fine. The Rangers, we're not going to give him that, and that kind of sounds like an overpayment, but yeah, Ranger fans are really starting to panic here, and I can completely understand why, because the Rangers just really aren't doing anything, and like I said, all these top names are going off the board. And honestly, like, if you're not going to do anything with the newly created cap space that is caused by, again, waiving Barclay Goodrow, then why even waive Barclay Goodrow? I mean, you could do the same thing next season and be in the, next year's when they're really going to need some cap space. So I'm struggling to find out now, like, what was the big need to waive Barclay Goodrow and move on to him if you're not going to put that money toward anything else? I don't know what it would be. I mean, if you have a lot of cap space going into the season, then obviously that creates more opportunity to make deals at or near the trade deadline this season. And maybe the Rangers look to go down that road. But, we're talking about free agents right now. We're talking about guys that you can just sign for whatever amount of length and whatever amount of money you want to do. When it comes to the trade deadline, you got to pay a premium more often than not. We saw guys, it started as kind of a seller's market at the deadline this past year. Elias Lindholm was one of the first names to be moved, and there was a lot, going back in the other direction for Lindholm. But then once we got to the trade deadline and deadline day, guys were being moved for not really a whole lot. So I don't know, man. It's not looking good for the Rangers. I know some people, were looking for him to make at least one splashy move today, bring in one of these big name players, one of these big money players. I know you don't want to overpay and you don't want to get yourself into a bad contract, but you do have to overpay if you want to land your guy, if it's one of the bigger name free agents. That's just the name of the game when it comes to free agency. I know the Rangers need cap space next year, and I get that, but man, you got to do a little bit more than just Sam Carrick on free agency day, especially when you moved Goodrow and opened up, a good amount of cap space for yourself. Another bit of news here. I'm seeing a tweet from Vince Mercogliano. The New York Ranger home opener will be on October 12th against Utah. So I don't know if that's Utah's first game ever. It's possible that maybe Utah plays a game before then. Maybe they'll be at home before they play the Rangers, but that's possibly going to be the first game in the history of the Utah franchise, formerly known as the Arizona Coyotes. I mean, I guess it's still the same franchise, but you get the idea. The first game for Utah. So we'll see. Maybe Drury's going to look to go the trade route. That's at least possible. Yeah, we'll see what happens here. Let me go ahead and get into some of your guys' comments, because the comment section's building up pretty quickly here. So let's see. Yes, Jordan Brown says Stamkos in Nashville. Yeah, that's now being reported as pretty much a done deal. And in fact, on the NHL Network here, there's a tweet going up from Stamkos to thank Tampa Bay and thanking him for his time there. We got a comment. I can actually put the comments on the screen here. Never realized I could do that. Clicked on one accidentally when I was getting the episode set up, and lo and behold, I can do this. But James Hutzler says, Ranger fans try not to overreact challenge. Yeah, we're all going to fail that, including me. And I feel like I'm usually, you look at other podcasters, and they all do a great job. There's so many awesome Ranger podcasters out there, but there are some that definitely get like really upset and kind of have knee-jerk reactions. And I can be that guy too at times. I try to be as level-headed as I possibly can, but I don't know, man. If Sam Carrick is your biggest free agent signing of the day of this entire afternoon here, that's not good either. Something that I can tell you that we will do is we will eventually, do an episode possibly as soon as tomorrow where we kind of take a look at the best of the rest free agents remaining, because every season this happens. It feels like you either sign with a new team if you're a free agent in the NHL. You either sign with a new team within 10 minutes of free agency starting, or you're a free agent for about 10 weeks. You get that initial flurry where everybody's, wheeling and dealing, and we want this guy and we want that guy. And the players want to sign too, because they're aware of, the cap situation around the entire league. And you could be left out in the cold if all these teams are at or near, the cap, and you may not be able to get the deal that you want if you, take your time in free agency. We'll do another comment from James here. This team got to ECF with literally garbage bags on ice. Roslovic, Trouba, and Lindgren, we will be fine. That's a little harsh. I mean, look, Trouba struggled. I made my feelings on Trouba and his playoff performance very, very clear when it came to, what he did in the playoffs, the immediate aftermath of the Ranger playoff expert. I went in on Trouba harder than I probably gone in on any Ranger player, in 1,100 and whatever episodes of Locked On New York Rangers. Roslovic just didn't bring much to the table. He had some important plays in Game 6 against the Canes, but he just wasn't very good. Lindgren, he's a hard-nosed player, and I don't really think he was a liability either. We'll see how things shake out with Lindgren. That's going to be another big topic that we'll discuss here on Locked On New York Rangers going forward. We've got DM Hockey, Can I say I am really happy with RJ draft pick and finally a defensive defender? I am excited for him. Yeah, you can say anything you want, man. This is Locked On Rangers, and we're live here, and we're going to be taking a bunch of, fan questions and inquiries and, opinions and everything. Yeah, I like the RJ draft pick too. I think it was time to invest in, the defenseman position in general. Because, of course, the Rangers have not really done that in recent seasons, so it makes sense to draft somebody pretty high. We've got DC Mechanical, Trouba and Hedel to the Ducks for Zegras and Vetrano. Yeah, that is not going to happen. I can only assume that's tongue-in-cheek, but that is certainly not going to happen. Let's see what else we got here. Everest says, Drury is getting nothing done. This guy is incompetent. Yeah, Drury, to me, I feel like he has had more hits than misses over the years. I mean, he since taking over as the GM, this team has gone from a team that was not a playoff team to a team that now twice in the last 3 seasons has made it to the Eastern Conference Final. But he did have a rough trade deadline this past year. Jack Roslovic didn't work out. Wenberg was fine, but like when that's your most effective player, he's a good defensive center, but he's not going to do anything offensively. They just didn't make the kind of moves that they needed to make. And a lot of teams around them got better, significantly better, and the Rangers did not. So, yeah, Drury had a tough trade deadline, and this is not looking like a good first day of free agency either. Robert Schmidt says, unbelievable. How do you not land Kane or Stamkos? Well, there's not really a whole lot the Rangers could do with Kane because Kane chose to stay with Detroit. He signed a deal with Detroit before free agency began. It's a 1-year, $4 million deal, but there's a bunch of bonuses built into Kane's contract. And if he hits all those bonuses, the performance bonuses, it goes up to $6.5 million. And my understanding is that the extra $2.5 million there will count against the cap next season. And the Rangers do not want that at all, because that's when the Rangers need to do new deals for Lafreniere, for Igor, possibly for some other guys too, including Keandre Miller. So that's why no Kane. I can't kill them for not re-signing Kane. It was said that Kane was maybe interested in the Rangers. The Rangers were maybe interested in him. Was that a ploy by the Kane camp to get Detroit to up its offer a little bit? That's entirely possible as well. But yeah, they don't get Kane. As for Stamkos, they could have gone all in on Stamkos. I think that's certainly an option that the Rangers had 4 years and $8 million is pretty steep, but I also don't think that that's completely unreasonable for a player the caliber of Steven Stamkos. The guy's been a phenomenal player for a long time. But, if the Rangers did sign him, everybody would be complaining. Not everybody, but, there'd be that portion of Ranger fans. They would be saying, oh, my God, another guy that's over the hill and past his prime, and they're old, and he's not physical enough and all this other stuff. So there were some pros and cons to signing Stamkos. If you're going to miss out on, like, Bertuzzi and Kane, maybe somebody like Toffoli, if you're going to miss out on Marchessault, then, yeah, I think at that point you do go out and you get Steven Stamkos. There's other guys I would have had above Stamkos, but if you're going to strike out on all those guys and not bring any of them in, then, yeah, by all means, I think the Rangers should have made a play for Steven Stamkos. No doubt about it. Let's see. Jordan Brown saying Toffoli signing in San Jose. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Robert Schmidt throws a couple of names out here. I would sign Duclair or Perron. I'm open to either one of them. We talked about Anthony Duclair at the trade deadline this past season. He's not a superstar, not a phenomenal player. The one thing about Duclair, though, and I said this when there were rumors flying about Teuvo Teräväinen as well, is that they're good players, but they're not really what the Rangers need right now because they're not those, gritty physical players that go in and do some of the dirty work. You could live with them for sure. They're obviously good players. I'd put Teräväinen ahead of Duclair, but if you're in a situation now where the money is tight and the big names are starting to dwindle, I'd be open to Duclair and maybe even Perron as well. I believe Jonathan Marchessault is still out there, is he not? We've got a comment here from DC Mechanical who says, get Marchessault. That would be great. Yeah, I mean, honestly, he's, as far as I can tell without going through the entire list right now, it sounds like Marchessault is the one like really big name, really impactful player that's still out there. Maybe the Rangers are making it happen with him. Maybe they're talking to him and trying to bring him in. It's at least possible. We will see. But that's not going to be cheap either. I think certainly there's going to be a price to be paid. And the other kind of drawback about Marchessault is he is 33 years old, and he's not the biggest guy either. So you would think that maybe his lack of size would work against him in the playoffs, but he's been a really big-time playoff performer for Vegas and really throughout his career. So, I would love for the Rangers to get Marchessault, especially now that guys like Bertuzzi, Toffoli, Stamkos, a couple of the other guys that we mentioned are apparently off the board here. Well, now Robert is saying that Marsh already signed, so I missed that. Somebody let me know in the chat because I can look it up myself here, but I don't happen to know where Marchessault signed. I did not see that one yet. Let's see. Scatman John says, are players and Rangers mad at the Rangers for the Goodrow and Trouba situations? There seem to be rumors that is indeed the case, and you can understand that to a certain degree. But you got to remember, these guys all sign contracts. If a no-move clause was that important for Barclay Goodrow, if a no-move clause, through the whole contract for Barclay Goodrow, for Jacob Trouba, then they had every right to negotiate for that and take a little bit less money to make that happen. Neither player did that. Now, Barclay Goodrow, I'm not so sure the Rangers would have given him a no-move clause under any circumstances, just because he's not, frankly, that good of a player where he could demand that kind of a thing. And as it turns out, neither was Jacob Trouba. But at the time, everybody thought the Rangers were getting one of the elite defensemen in the league when they traded for Jacob Trouba and ultimately gave him that big contract extensions. I've seen some things where maybe the Rangers aren't happy about that, but you know what? You have to get over it. I mean, you're a professional and you've got a job to do, and this is the nature of the business, and it works both ways. The players can negotiate for contracts that they think they're worthy of, and teams can do things that they feel they have to do when it comes to improving their team. Robert Schmidt says Tarasenko. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about Tarasenko that much, and he is getting older now. What is he, like 32 or 33 at this point? Not the player that he used to be. He was extraordinarily quiet against the Rangers until the very end of that series when he scored a very important goal. But he just won another Stanley Cup, and he has some familiarity with the Rangers. He obviously plays right wing. He could jump back up there with Mika and with Kreider. So that's an option. And honestly, the more that you see the Rangers, the more of these players that are going off the board here, the more open I become to a player like Vladimir Tarasenko. I don't think he's exactly what the Rangers need, and I don't know what the cost would be. And it's possible that Tarasenko could be an overpayment by whichever team signs him because he's now won 2 Stanley Cups and he's had a great career. But he's starting to get up there a little bit, and he is starting to slow down a little bit. So, I mean, we'll see. But, yeah, when you get to a point where all these top free agents are flying off the board, Tarasenko all of a sudden doesn't start to sound so bad. L- Lamobot, is that the name? Lamobot says Trouba, Wenberg, Rosovic, Kako, Hedel, gotta go. All right, so there's a lot to unpack there. You're going to get your wish with Wenberg and Rosovic. I doubt very much that either one of them will be back. Although, again, the longer this goes with all these big free agents signing elsewhere, the more it maybe cracks the door for a Wenberg return. I think Rosovic is definitely gone. We'll see about Wenberg. Trouba, I think, going by that Larry Brooks report, one way or another, he probably has played his final game as a member of the New York Rangers. Kako, that could go either way, but if the Rangers don't bring in a big time right wing free agent of some kind, then Kako's going to stay, and he should stay if that's the case. If the Rangers can't land anybody, they need somebody to play right wing, and hasn't been perfect, hasn't been smooth sailing for Kako. But you're going to take a position where you're thin and make yourself even thinner if the Rangers don't sign any right wingers, and if they then also decide to trade Kako. I know, Brent Hoffman will eventually be an option and everything, but I get the feeling Kako will stick around if the Rangers don't make any moves in free agency. And as for Hedel, the thing is, if you trade Philip Hedel, it's basically just going to be a salary dump because there's no team out there, given Philip Hedel's concussion history, that's going to give up any kind of premium like prospect or draft pick or anything along those lines. I mean, you might be able to get like a 5th or 6th rounder for Philip Hedel, but he has such an uncertain future that, nobody's going to take on that kind of a cap hit. It's over $4 million for a player with that much uncertainty, unless it's for basically nothing. And even then, I'm not so sure teams will be lining up to do it. So I can't see Philip Hedel being on the move either. All right, we got a comment from Alan Mitchell. You block 183 shots and see how your ankles hold up. Try holding the puck in the other end. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. Look, Jacob Trouba, he has his fans out there, and I totally get it. I can certainly appreciate and respect his brand of physical, old school hockey. Absolutely. I just keep coming back to the contract. You cannot continue to keep giving $8 million a season to Jacob Trouba, especially when you see the way that he played in the playoffs. Who else? I want to get somebody that we haven't heard from yet. We'll go to Vin Moran here. Vin says, why do we even want Kane or Stamkos? We need to get bigger, younger, and faster. Because they're excellent players, and they're guys that can help the Rangers win a Stanley Cup. It's really as simple as that. Of course, it's a moot point now because they've both signed with other teams. Yeah, I mean, look, you do want this team to get, I wouldn't necessarily say younger. The Rangers don't have an old team. I mean, when you look at their skaters right now, I don't believe there's any skater under contract on this Ranger team that is older than like 32 years old. So it's not an old team at all. If you want to get bigger, I mean, you can do that. They kind of did that with the Sam Carrick signing. He's not a giant, but he's got good size. And faster, sure. I mean, look, they're gonna eventually bring up somebody like Gabe Perreault. He can fly, and maybe they sign somebody that is kind of a speed demon. You could go out and look for maybe like a cheap speed kind of a player, somebody in the vein of like a Michael Grabner. Grabner was only here for a season and a half, but they signed him to a small contract, and he wasn't like a phenomenal player or anything like that, but the guy could absolutely fly. So maybe you can find somebody like that if you want to just add a little bit of speed to this team, maybe like a diamond in the rough in free agency here. Nate Ferguson says, is Drury trying to play out a low-key free agency like he did at the trade deadline? I mean, maybe, but again, these names are going. Like, you can only slow play this thing for so long because, the free agency day starts and it's a sprint. I mean, you guys see how this thing is unfolding here. We saw even before noon rolled around that, just dozens of not dozens, but like a lot of players were flying off the board here, and this guy's going to sign here and that guy's going to sign there. This is not really the day to slow play things. You gotta hit the ground running if you're a free agent and look to sign somewhere, or if you're a GM and you're looking to bring somebody in. Yeah, big thanks to Michael here. He says Marshy went to Nashville, so Nashville kind of cleaning up here. They get Marchessault and they got Stamkos. I haven't seen like a whole list of everybody who signed everywhere, but at first glance here, it does seem like Nashville going to be one of, if not the big winners when it comes to free agency day here. So yeah. DM Hockey says should trade Mika. Yeah, well, he's got a full no move clause, so unless you can talk him into doing that, it's just not going to happen. And look, I get people being upset with Mika Zibanejad, and obviously he didn't get it done against the Panthers, but nobody on the Rangers really in general got it done against the Panthers. And when you look at what the Panthers did, the Panthers won the Stanley Cup. Let's not lose sight of that. Panthers won the Stanley Cup. Phenomenal hockey team. And it wasn't just the Rangers star players that they shut down. They shut down all the Lightning star players. They shut down all of Boston's star players. And they mostly shut down all of Edmonton's star players. Obviously, the Oilers got it rolling a little bit when they got back into the series. But, I mean, they shut down everybody. They shut down all the big scorers on every team that they played in the playoffs. So you got to remember, this doesn't always come down to like, oh, the Rangers don't want it bad enough. There's not enough effort. There's not enough willpower. There's not enough sandpaper. Obviously, again, Mika and the rest of the Rangers stars could have played better. But there are two teams out there, and the Rangers just so happen to be up against another excellent team and a team that wants to win the Stanley Cup just as badly as they do. And somebody has to win and somebody has to lose. So I can understand there being some frustration with Mika, but the guy does everything. He does a lot of good things for the Rangers. And even in a down season, still flirting with point per game territory for Mika Zibanejad. To say nothing of everything that he does defensively, everything he does on the penalty kill. So, yeah, I mean, trading Mika Zibanejad, the whole thing's probably a moot point because he's got the full no move clause. But I don't really feel like that's a solution either. Jordan Brown letting us know, thank you, Jordan, that Marchessault got 5 years, $5.5 million. It's a little steep, but I think when we did our episode and I was talking about Marchessault, I pitched something like this. I think I said 4 or 5 years, around like $5 million per season. So you could have gone a little bit higher for that. Of course, Marchessault is 33, so that'll take him to his age 38 season. But again, like, that's just the way it goes. If you want somebody like Jonathan Marchessault, then you might have to give out a contract. It's a little bit longer than you want. I mean, Jonathan Marchessault at 38, what kind of player is he going to be? We don't know. Probably not as good of a player as he is right now. But that's kind of the name of the game. You got to overpay sometimes. Robert Schmidt says, did Skinner sign anywhere yet? I do not believe so. And, he's an option. He got bought out by the Buffalo Sabres. He's an option. Maybe he'd sign for a little bit less with the Rangers if he wants to cup chase. I mean, look, Jeff Skinner has not exactly played a ton of playoff games throughout his career. In fact, I'm going to look that up right now. I know for sure he hasn't been there with Buffalo because Buffalo hasn't been, in the playoffs in about 20 years, whatever it is. I think like 08, was that the last time they were in the playoffs? It's somewhere around that area. Jeff Skinner has never once in his NHL career played in the playoffs. And Jeff Skinner at this point, how old is he now? He is 32. So he's not ancient. I like Skinner. He's got a heck of a shot. I think he's got pretty good speed as well, but he's not the ideal fit for the Rangers because he's not one of those guys that's going to bang around the boards and, throw his weight around and all those things and play that tough, physical, gritty hockey that Ranger fans so desperately covet. But he is a good player. And I do think if you were to sign him and put him on the top line right wing, he is somebody that, can snipe and might mesh very well with Mika and Kreider. I don't think he's a perfect fit. But Jeff Skinner, I mean, how many seasons has he been in the league here? I got to tally them up real quick. Just give me a second. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. He's been in the league for 14 seasons and has never played a Stanley Cup playoff game. So if he's getting to the point in his career where he's tired of that, he's tired of the losing, he wants to go to a team where he's got a chance to win the Stanley Cup and he wants to cup chase, then yeah, if Jeff Skinner could come in on like a 1-year deal for not a whole lot of money, I'd be open to that for sure. It's somewhat similar to Wheeler. Wheeler was quite a bit older. Wheeler was 37, Skinner was 32, but Wheeler had just been bought out by the Jets. He was still getting money from them. Jeff Skinner has just been bought out by the Sabres, so he's still getting money for them. If he wants to come in at like 1 year at $1 million, why not? I mean, he plays, I believe he's a right winger. Is that right? Skinner, he's listed as a left winger here, but, you could throw him in the right wing probably. Most guys are at least somewhat capable of playing both. So, yeah, honestly, I'd be definitely open to Skinner because if he signs here, I get a feeling it'd be for pretty cheap. He's got the buyout money still coming from Buffalo, so he'd be willing to sign for a little bit cheaper, and he does fill a need for the Rangers. And again, the more you see these top free agents sign with this team or with that team, all of a sudden, guys like Tarasenko, Duclair, Skinner, they all start to sound a little bit better, when it comes to the Rangers and their free agent prospects here. Mark says, if Trouba keeps resisting, waive him. Yeah, I think that's probably the end game here. If Trouba wants to block, a trade to Detroit, he's got every right to do that. It's in his contract. He could block a trade to 15 different teams. If he wants to put Detroit on that list, he's completely allowed to do that. But I think this still probably ends with Jacob Trouba on a different team next year. And if he doesn't want to go to Detroit and the Rangers waive him, then he loses all control of what team he goes to. I think what will happen If he blocks up the trade to Detroit and the Rangers can't trade him anywhere else, then you will see the Rangers waive him. If nobody then claims Trouba on waivers, then you will probably see the Rangers buy him out. I can't imagine that the Rangers are going to bury him in the minors, in the AHL, because there is a rule now. It's the Wade Redden rule that you can only bury 1.15 million, I believe is the exact number of a contract in the minors. So yeah, Trouba was bad last year, but are you really going to take a $6.85 million cap hit to put Trouba in the minors rather than just pay him $8 million to play with the Rangers? Very doubtful. So I think one way or another, again, they'll try to trade him. If it doesn't work, they waive him. If nobody claims him, they buy him out. And buying him out would be not as good because he'd still carry a $4 million cap hit for this year, $4 million for next year, $2 million the year after that, $2 million the year after that. So that wouldn't be perfect, but it would free up some money. And I feel like Drury's getting to the point where he almost feels like moving on from Trouba in one way or another might be addition by subtraction at this point. As we mentioned, Braden Schneider's ready to take his place. Braden Schneider has been ready for a top 4 role in the NHL. It's been a luxury to have him on the third pairing. But I feel like, they certainly don't have any qualms about putting him, on the second pairing, most likely with K'Andre Miller. And Miller, he struggled at times last year. It felt like he was at his best when he was with Braden Schneider. So I think they want to roll with that as their second pairing for the foreseeable future. Miller's an RFA after this season, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. All right, give me a second. I got to take a sip of water here. Thank you guys for tuning in live. Much appreciated. Looks like we've got 117 people watching this live, so that's obviously really cool. And for the everydayers, can't thank you guys enough. There's so many great places to get your Ranger news, all these different podcasts. We are the only daily Ranger podcast, but there's awesome podcasts all over the place. When it comes to the Rangers, there's amazing beat writers that do such a tremendous job covering this team. So the fact that you guys are choosing to at least spend part of your Free Agent Monday with me, that certainly means a lot. And I got to thank you guys in the live chat as well, keeping me updated here. I've got, like I said, I've got NHL Network here. I've got, Twitter on my screen over here, trying to stay up to date with everything going on, but also hosting a live show while I'm doing it. So it's definitely challenging, but appreciate you guys keeping me updated on everything here. And like I said, we're just going to keep things going here for a little bit longer, take a couple more of your guys' comments and questions, and see how everything shakes out here for the Rangers. At some point, we will call it, and then might even do another episode later today. And if you're new around here, which, again, 100 and whatever people watching right now, I get the feeling there probably are some new watchers, some new listeners, whatever it might be. Definitely go ahead and give us a subscribe on YouTube because we do this every day. We do 5 episodes per week, pretty much year-round. There's a small section in the off-season where we go down to 3 episodes per week, but that's only about 6 weeks or so, and then we're right back at it 5 days a week. So every episode is about 20 to 30 minutes, except for this one because it's a special live UFA edition of Locked On New York Rangers. But definitely give us a subscribe. Definitely like the video if you get a chance to do that as well. And like I said, I'll keep an eye on Twitter here. I'll also, keep taking some of your guys' comments and questions. Nate Ferguson says, who's taking the C if Trouba is moved? Yeah, that's going to be a debate for sure. I'm going to save that for if and when Trouba gets moved, because I suppose right now there's still that possibility that Trouba's back next year. And if he is back, I think he remains the captain. I think that's probably going to happen. Although he's kind of at odds with Drury right now. You never know how that could shake out. But I think if Trouba is moved, you're looking at a situation. My vote would be for Vincent Trocheck. I feel like, there's going to be some people that say either Mika Zibanejad or Chris Kreider, and I get that. They're the elder statesmen of this team, and they've both been alternate captains forever. And, when you just kind of look at it at first glance, it kind of seems like they would be next man up. But I also feel like if they were going to make one of them the captain, it probably would have happened by now. They've had multiple opportunities to make either one of those two the captain. They went for like 2 or 3 years without a captain at all. And Kreider and Mika were here for that whole time. And then you had them finally picking a captain in what turned out to be Gallant's second and final season as Ranger coach. And they went with Jacob Trouba. So if Trouba gets moved, are you really going to do it now, Mika and Kreider? I mean, you could. You could make that case. If it's going to be one of those two, I would take Kreider over Mika. I just feel like he has the voice of a captain a little bit more than Mika Zibanejad does. I don't know that for sure. I don't see everything that goes on behind the scenes, but I just get that feeling. But Trocheck would be my choice. That guy is down in the weeds every single night. He's out there battling. He does literally everything for the Rangers. A phenomenal special teams player, winning faceoffs left and right. He's an absolute cheat code when it comes to the dot. He'll get under their skin of his opponents a little bit. The one thing maybe you could say about Trocheck that isn't captain-esque is that we do see him take some bad penalties from time to time. Maybe slapping the C on him, though, gets him to straighten up in that area of his game. Because I love Trouba. I've always been Trocheck, rather. I don't know if I was saying Trouba there, but Trocheck. I've been a big fan of him before he came to the Rangers. I've always liked his game. Love that signing when the Rangers made it in free agency a couple of years ago. And I think he'd just be an excellent choice. Maybe a little bit of a dark horse candidate is Alexis Lafreniere. I don't know that they would go that route with him being as young as he is right now and there being some veterans on the team. If Trouba stays, though, for the rest of his contract, the last 2 years, and then walks in free agency, and then the Rangers need a new captain, at that point, I could see them potentially being ready to give it to Lafreniere. But we'll see. That's a long way off. And I get the feeling that Trouba, especially seeing that report from Larry Brooks, Trouba's going to be on his way one way or another this offseason. Mark says plenty of solid players out there. Stay away from mega contracts. I mean, it depends. It depends on the player. But yeah, I mean, you could play some, we have money ball when it comes to baseball. You could play some money puck right now if you're the Rangers. Find some diamonds in the rough. Find some guys that are undervalued. Maybe they've already done that with Sam Carrick. I mean, he's not going to be an offensive juggernaut. We know that, but he could be a solid contributing member of this team. And maybe there's a couple other guys out there like that could fit that mold for the Rangers. But I don't want to see a free agency, deal come and go with Sam Carrick being the biggest pickup. I'm also now seeing on the screen here, Victor Arvidsson. This is being reported by Elliot Friedman, going to Edmonton, 2 years at $4 million. I would have paid that for Victor Arvidsson. Victor Arvidsson was injured last year, so there is some risk, but he's only 31 years old. He's a good all-around player, and I don't know. I mean, 2 years, $4 million, I would do that. I mean, are you spending that money anywhere else? It doesn't look like you are. And again, I know next offseason you need to do new contracts for Igor, for Lafreniere, but paying $4 million to Victor Arvidsson, I mean, you could buy out Jacob Trouba and save $4 million there, and then the other $4 million. I mean, I don't know. It's complicated, but I would have done that for Victor Arvidsson for sure. That's disappointing to see him not go to the Rangers. 2 years, $4 million going to Edmonton. So the Rangers going to do anything? What do you guys think here? Scatman John says, honestly, Jeff Skinner for $2 million at 3 years could be insane. He's not that old, and he can still put up numbers. Yeah, I like Skinner quite a bit if they can get him at a reasonable cost. I'm not worried about like his age or anything. It just, to me, seems like he's not somebody that's really the prototypical playoff performer. I could be wrong. Maybe Jeff Skinner goes to the playoffs and he's lighting up the world and driving the Rangers to the Stanley Cup. You never know what can happen. But at first glance, he's not a physical player. He's got a heck of a shot, but it feels like kind of more of the same. We want somebody that can, play a little bit grittier than that. And, just play that physical brand of playoff hockey. Let's see what else we got here. SMH says, every team around us getting better and better, and Drury is just sleeping. I don't think he's sleeping, but I think he's playing things a little bit too safely here. You know what? Go out and overpay for one of these big-time free agents. That's the name of the game. You can't really bring in an impactful player if you don't overpay at least a little bit. Because, again, there's other teams that are, looking for this player or looking for that player. I just saw the Boston Bruins just signed Lindholm and Zadorov. I mean, again, I don't know what the cost there is, but you got to outbid other teams that are interested. And I don't know, man, this is a disappointing day, at least so far, when it comes to free agency. Ah, man. Who else do we want to hear from here? James Rochette says, I don't think we are going to do anything. It is unfortunately really starting to look there. And, again, there's this quick flurry of players that sign here, they sign there, during this free agent rush every season. And then you have other players that don't sign until sometime after that. So there will be like a second wave of free agents, and there will be some guys that stay out there for a while. Right now, we mentioned Tarasenko. He could be an option. Anthony Duclair could be an option. There are some people out there. It looks like Mark Desault is signed. So, yeah, a lot of the bigger names definitely not lasting here. Jordan Brown says not much they can't do much with Jacob Trouba on the books. Yeah, no, I mean, look, they've got a decent amount of money right now. I forget the exact amount. I think it's like $8 million. So they could do something. Current cap space per cap friendly for the Rangers is $11.8 million. So yeah, no, they could absolutely sign one of the bigger free agents. Obviously, moving on from Trouba would help, but there's enough there. I mean, nobody's getting $11 million today, I don't think. So Jake Gensel seems to have the biggest contract, and he got $9 million. So yeah, there's enough money there. They can do something. SMH says no chance we can win it if we just run it back with the same squad. I would have to disagree with that. The Rangers made it to the Eastern Conference Final. They were one of the last 4 teams standing, and once you make it that far, I think everybody's got a shot at it. I would even argue that, any team that makes the playoffs, in my mind, has a shot at it. We've seen some lower-seeded teams go on some deep, long runs. We've seen some lower-seeded teams even win the Stanley Cup. The Kings as an 8 seed certainly comes to mind. Everybody's got a shot at it. But, yeah, I mean, the Rangers against the Panthers right now, it's a tough matchup for the Rangers. I think the Rangers do sometimes get sold short when it comes to their physicality. People make it sound like they're this team that doesn't throw their weight around, doesn't stand up for themselves. The Rangers were like 9th or 10th in the league in fights this past season, so it's not a team that lets itself get pushed around. And I think they were 7th in hits this season as a team, so they do play physical hockey, but they are lagging behind the Panthers in that department. The Rangers are physical, the Panthers are more physical, and the Rangers they have decent size. The Panthers have big-time size, and that was on display at times in the Eastern Conference Finals. So you make a point there. Like, I see what you're going for, but there's no there's no guarantee that the Rangers can't win it with this current team. The bottom line is there's 32 teams. There can be only one champion every year, and that's the biggest reason, more so than anything else, why the Rangers did not win it this past season. So I figure there's nothing really happening right now, so I figure we're going to pretty much call it there. We'll do one more comment here from Chris Jury. I can assume this is not the actual Chris Jury, but that's the username. I'm okay if the Rangers don't overpay for anyone today. The only name I was interested in was Marchessault, and good luck to him cashing in with the Preds. We don't need any cap issues 4 to 5 years later. Yeah, I mean, you would probably not be enamored with that contract when it gets later in that contract. But the thing is, the Rangers, what they would be doing if they were to sign Marchessault to a 5-year deal, you're attacking the current window that's open right now, and you're going to pay for it a little bit later. But again, no free agent contract is going to be perfect because you have to outbid other people, and you have to figure out a way to land the player that you want to land. So I would have been okay with going that long for Marchessault. To me, it beats not doing anything, and I know they got Carrick, but Carrick isn't going to be the guy that ultimately, pushes the Rangers over the top. I don't think. He's a nice complimentary piece, but nothing great. Let's see. DT37 Ice says, Drury is doing this right. Don't jump off the bridge with the free agents. He's going to make a big trade. He might. We'll see. But the thing is, if you make a trade, you got to give something up for that. You got to give up a prospect. You got to give up a certain amount of draft picks. Today, this is free agency day. You can just sign somebody. You don't owe this to that team or that to that team. You just bring somebody in, and the Rangers just aren't doing that. And the names are certainly starting to dwindle at this point. But I'm going to call it right there for today. Really thank you guys so much for joining this Locked On live stream here. It's a ton of fun. We mix in some live shows every now and then. If you are new here, definitely like the show. Give the podcast a subscription because, again, we cover this team 5 days a week here. Most episodes are 20 to 30 minutes. We talk to you guys every day about what's going on in Rangerland. And, we cover this team from every angle. And would really very much appreciate anybody giving this video a like or giving the channel a subscription. But I figure we can call it there. If the Rangers do anything big, and possibly even if not, might have another episode a little bit later today. Going to call it right here for now, though. Thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. If you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely, once again, subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time, possibly even as soon as later tonight. Have an awesome day.